would be depending on recording. I mean, that we wouldn't have any Buddhism. Yeah, they didn't even have things to write at that time to make notes, so they were just listening. Yeah, so like that. Okay, so we start. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody is okay. We're still with the Bodhisattva, who is the text by Shantideva about how to do the practices of a Bodhisattva once one has decided that one's goal in life is to purify your mind to such an extent so that its actual nature appears, which is, immeasurable love, compassion, and wisdom, and so that we can lead everybody to that state. So I think for us Westerners to kind of go into bodhicitta and to develop that mind is quite difficult because we don't really trust that our nature is pure. Or how many of you trust that your nature is pure and you can never lose that purity? You can raise your hand. Okay, Elisheva, Leora, Maya, not sure, yeah. Okay, Tipi also. And that's really important. So for us, we have a tendency to always kind of fall, to identify with the negative sides. And especially when we read texts also from these realized masters, which are quite, they're quite heavy sometimes. And then it becomes, oh gosh, this is so difficult and it will take so long. And who knows if I ever get there? And we're full of doubt. So I think we start with the reflection to connect to the positive side that we have, which is also kind of a little bit diluted, okay? Because we still think I have love or I have compassion or something like that. But it's really important to understand, as we started the 6th chapter, that he starts with the disadvantages of anger. Yeah, it's so important that you see how dangerous anger is, so that you kind of you don't have this inner agreement with anger when it comes up, okay? Because you see, the delusions, we have them anyway. So we can not get up in the morning. I mean, we can try, of course. We can try to get up in the morning and think, okay, today I make a decision. I will have no attachment. I will have no irritation. I will have no frustration. I will have no jealousy. I will have no this and that, okay? This we can do, but we can make that decision. We can have this attitude, but then during the day, depending on what happens, maybe jealousy comes up, maybe anger comes up, irritation comes up, frustration comes up. Certainly attachment is coming up. So these delusions, we do have them. Some of you might know why. Why do we have these? Why do they arise, even though they're not being asked to arise? I mean, there's one verse like this, which will come soon. Why do we have them? Anybody knows? Why do we have delusions? Because we want to have them? No, okay. So why do we have them? You can unmute your microphone and say.
Karma.
Huh?
Karma.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
samsara.
Karma is yeah, that's true. But because there is a seed, there is a habit, okay? Because there was a moment of anger before. And as long as that moment of anger is not, when we have a moment of anger and we not consciously kind of dissolve it, it goes into what is called the more subtle mind, or you can call it subconsciousness if you like to call it like this. And it remains there. And then when outer conditions arise, that maybe, remind you of the same situation, or your eye doesn't like it because we have lots of expectations, how the world will be. This anger arises. Don't feel bad about this, please. If you have a lot of anger, or if you have a lot of delusions, it kind of means you've never, maybe in a past life, you have not really thought about the disadvantage of these delusions or what they do to us. And you kind of, you know, we agree with them. We have this inner agreement with them that they are here, they're here to protect us, that they are here to give us happiness, because all of us, we have, everybody, every being has 24 hours a day the wish to be happy. And we create, maybe not 24 hours a day, because luckily we also go to sleep, but many hours of the day, we create more imprints for not finding what we want. Yeah? And through our actions, as Maya was saying. So when we look at, you know, the Four Noble Truths, so there is the First Noble Truth of suffering or dissatisfaction, or however you want to call it, irritation, lamentation, pain, all these kinds of things. We look at that, and then we look at the causes. So very often people just think about the negative emotions or delusions, okay? But it's two things. It's karma and the negative emotions. So the negative emotions, they will arise. What we can do at the moment, though, is to kind of take a step back. I think we talked about this already, like you pause, and then you look, and then you examine, you investigate, and all this. And for that, you need awareness, you need mindfulness. But this is what we can do, and not to kind of collaborate with them and then do an action. Because then it doesn't create another imprint of a negative action, which will result, the imprint of the negative action will result in a situation that you don't like. That will result in suffering. Yeah. If you don't act on the negative emotion, it just goes back into your subconsciousness. It will arise again, but less strong. By starting to question these negative emotions, by starting to really see the story that they tell you, by starting to see that they are in a big way distorting reality, that they only look one way and they exaggerate that way, because if you are like, you know, deluded and agitated, and somebody else next to you is calm, and you ask them, how do you see this situation when they are calm? They will tell you another story. But then unfortunately, if we don't really think about this when we are calm, we don't believe the person who is calm and think, well, they are cold-hearted, they don't care, you know, they don't have compassion, because we think that in order to have compassion, you need to have anger against the aggressors. Yeah. So this is what we can do now with awareness, not to fall into the trap of the negative emotions and then act on them. Yeah. And especially not to identify with them. So let's do some awareness meditation, because this is needed. That you are able to look at your mind, to see, to really to detect what is the mind state at the moment. So you might have to ask yourself that question: how do I feel? Yeah, you don't necessarily need to give an answer from the head, but just to be aware of it, to feel it, to live it. Yeah, it's about this, because when we are too much in the head, we think we know. And then also we need very good friends. You know, if you have a feeling that the way you act is very compassionate or very patient or very, you know, always there for others, and you ask a very good friend, how do you see it? Sometimes they give you a different answer. It's very difficult for us to really admit that, yes, we are selfish. Yes, we are this and that. And yes, I have anger. And well, anger, I think anger and attachment, maybe we are able to confess to others, isn't it? We are able to say, like, wow, I got really angry the other day. Not at the moment when we're angry, because if somebody says, are you angry? We go, no. Yeah, have you ever noticed that? Anger can't admit that it's angry. At the moment you're angry, but afterwards. But something that, for example, something that we don't admit is arrogance and jealousy. Yeah, this we are ashamed. There's hardly anybody who says, oh, wow, you know, I'm so jealous of that person. Yeah. But it's also a negative emotion. So it's also one of the the afflictions. It's also one of the, what's it called, kleshas. Okay, so some negative emotions we can see and we are able to talk about it. And being able to talk about this is quite important if you don't want to talk to others, but at least to yourself, you know, like in a neutral way, not going like this, you are bad because you do this, or feeling guilty and then having to hide them. I mean, I can't repeat it often enough. Shame and guilt is not mentioned anywhere, actually, in the Buddhist teachings. If you look at the positive mental factors, then it is mentioned. Yeah, if you look at the 51 mental factors in Lorik, actually the first the first translations were shame and embarrassment, but I don't think it's a good translation. So lately it's being translated as, instead of shame, integrity, like a mind that very confidently says, no, I will never do that because this is not good. And when they talk about shame, you see, the shame has to be applied before you do the action. Then it is helpful, not after. Then it becomes a negative, a positive factor. Then it becomes a factor that helps you not to say the word that you are about to say, not to take something that doesn't belong to you, not to kill that mosquito or bug or whatever, because I don't think you go around killing people. Yeah. So shame is like this kind of shame that is a positive mental factor in the Buddhist teachings on how the mind works, is actually compassion for ourselves. Because that kind of shame that would not do something for yourself is like compassion for yourself, because that kind of mental factor knows the consequences of your action and therefore has the strength and the power to say no. Then the next one is embarrassment. And this one is, you're not doing it for the sake of others, you know, because you don't want to upset them, you don't want to hurt them. And that one can be mixed with arrogance. Like with some people, you don't do it in front of them. Some other people, you don't really care. And this is why the guru is very helpful. So when you are in the company of your guru, it's quite rare that you get angry. At least you don't have exploding anger. Yeah. Somebody who has been in the presence of gurus, do you know what I'm talking about? That your mind is in a very good state. Actually, naturally, you don't, because you don't want to show your ugly side to the guru also, because you want to impress that person. So the guru just being present, one thing is he really kind of blesses you or influences you by just being present, but also you are much more mindful and you have much more interest, as I'm saying, not to show your negative side. So then while the guru is present, you're also protected from doing negative karma. Yeah. Now, again, that depends a little bit on the motivation why you do it. But I don't think that, you know, not wanting to show the negative side, I don't think that is so conscious. Yeah. It's more also we don't want to disappoint the person, or we don't want to hurt them. Okay? So, but this kind of shame that we use, or embarrassment that we use, this one is called in, I only know it in German anyway. So it's kind of, you feel embarrassed when you are not living up to your expectations how you should be. It's called mana in Pali. Yeah, usually if somebody does a lot of Vipassana courses, there's a lot of talk about mana. Like, you know, you want to appear in a certain way, and then and then your ego comes up, then the ego is very strong. So that is a negative emotion, that one, this kind of embarrassment, you know, or I don't know, you have yeah, this thing when you eat spinach and then something remains in your teeth. Yeah, and then nobody tells you. Or if somebody tells you, you're embarrassed, you know, we can be embarrassed about something as stupid as that. Spinach can get caught in your teeth. Everybody's teeth. So, and you didn't see it, but it can create a lot of embarrassment. Or let's say nobody tells you, and you've been, holding a speech like very enthusiastically in front of very important people, and then you come home in the evening and you kind of look at your face and you see that the spinach in the teeth, and you know that you ate the spinach before you had the speech. So then that can ruin your whole joy about having given a good speech, isn't it? This is mana. So this is kind of, that's not what is appropriate on the path. Feeling very low about yourself is not appropriate on this path. Being self-confident, that knowing that, yes, knowing, or at least trusting, okay? At least trusting, okay, my nature or my mind by nature is pure. The negative emotions, they are learned. They have become a habit. There we are, as some of you might know, we are in what is called the desire realm. So then we know, okay, my task is now, with these kind of methods, to start to go to war against these negative emotions. Not to go against you, but to go against these attitudes or these delusions. And that it creates havoc, and that it is very painful. I mean, this is obvious. Yeah, so don't expect this to be easy. So what is important is that you know what you are going against, that you're not going against you as a whole, yeah, but against the negative emotion. So we start with language, actually. Instead of saying, I am so angry, I am jealous, I am this and I am that, we go like, oh, there's anger in the mind, yeah? So you already made the step out of the anger a little bit, because then you are in your awareness, or when you are afraid, or when you panic, or, full of desire, oh, there is desire in the mind. And then create some curiosity. I wonder what it says. I wonder what attachment is, or, desire is telling me. And then you will notice it is telling me, if I get this object, I will be happy ever after, especially if you're addicted to something. Yeah, when the desire is very strong, and the Shempa is this thrive, is this force behind it, that here it's not good to consume it, or it can be, it's not good to say this word, but the thrive, the intention, that the Shempa behind it is so strong that you cannot prevent yourself from reaching out and getting it, and then whatever, consuming it or saying that word, or whatever. So if you cannot make that step by watching it, okay, what kind of promises is the desire making now? Yeah, and it will still take especially if it's desire for things that are not that helpful. It doesn't have to be just food. It can also be watching TV, or things like that. So when you do fall into the trap and you reach out and you get the thing, it's always good at the end to stop a short moment and go like, okay, now what? Has the promise been fulfilled? That there is real satisfaction. Because the problem with sense pleasures is, the moment you stop, the happiness from it is gone. I know that from sense pleasures, it's not just a physical pleasure, it can also be a mental pleasure. But then if the contact to the substance is gone, then that's it, it's finished. The memory doesn't help. Yeah, so that you have to repeat again and again and again and again. And then there's a longing to go and repeat these things. And then we waste our time, and the desire becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, because the satisfaction has not appeared, like the lasting satisfaction. Yeah? The moment you stop these very pleasant things, then you want more. You want again. And then whatever you have is not good enough. And then there's a lot of unhappiness about this. So it's good to challenge these stories that these delusions are telling us. Yeah, and to challenge it. And I still remember, because many of you know, yeah, I was an alcoholic. And after stopping to drink alcohol, I fell into food. And that lasted quite a long time, but it wasn't very satisfying, because at least with alcohol, I was relaxed and I had no fear and I didn't panic and all this. So with the food, it's just, you know, you just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no real satisfaction nowhere if you can't stop. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, at one point in one teaching, and that really help me to kind of to lessen it, and less. And at the moment, I think now it's pretty much okay. So he said, the moment you let go of desire, freedom comes. And that one sentence, it really triggered something in me. So when you listen to the masters, you listen to teachings, or you do reflections, and you see what actually goes in, try to remember that one sentence, because you are being given, like, thousands of sentences, thousands of methods. And why are you given so many? Because then your task is to find out which one works. So write it down, or learn it by heart, or that one then stays with you all the time, and this one will help you to kind of to let go. Yeah. And to again and again and again think about the disadvantages of these delusions, because these are the ones that when they are paired with an action, these are the ones that create suffering. Okay? Is that okay? Do you have any questions? You can always ask questions. Yeah, luckily the group is small enough so that everybody can give their opinion or their question or whatever. So it becomes a bit like a study group, and not only me working, but also you working a little bit. Yes, Il. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I understand this like loop that you're talking about, how we are habituated, and it's very easy to understand when it's like craving something tangible or physical, but something about the negative emotions like jealousy or not even anger, but just being very critical, being very judgmental. I find this loop is harder to grasp.
Yeah. The more subtle, the more difficult it becomes. This is why they say, first work with your biggest delusion so that you can really grasp them and you see how you suffer. But the same thing, when you are grumpy, when you're critical, again, when we criticize, it seems as if it changes the situation or the other person. That's the story behind it. We feel better somehow, and then there's a totally unrealistic expectation that the other person will change if we criticize them. Instead
but
of
I don't feel like it makes me feel like the situation would be different. It just makes me feel like I'm right, I'm the better person. It just I don't know, it feeds my ego more. It's not like I feel like if I will judge them or criticize them, suddenly they will change and everything will be better. It's even worse.
Yeah, but still, I mean, this is when we criticize people like directly, we have an expectation that they will learn from it and they will change, definitely. Otherwise, why would you do it? We're not really, I don't think we're that cruel that we're criticizing people in order just to hurt them. I hope not. Yeah. So we have an expectation that they will change. Yeah. And if we criticize just, as you say, it's a habit also.
Yeah, definitely.
The habit. It's kind of a ripening of negative karma, only to see the negative sides, because we come to that today, only to see the negative sides. It's negative karma ripening, not to see the positive side. And it is a training. It is a mind training. There is some people, whatever they do, even if the situation is very difficult, first thing they mention is the positive side of it. Yeah, we have one in Bern who kind of, the second time she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, like with really nasty cancer. And so she called me, she did cry on the phone, but she said, good thing I only had to go to the doctor in the afternoon, because then I could still work before I went to the doctor. If I would have had to go in the morning, I couldn't have gone to work. So that was her first reaction. Yeah, so again, it's a matter of awareness, not to fall into the trap. Because when we criticize, it's a very unhappy mind, yeah? But it has some kind of, as you say, it has some kind of arrogance in it. I could do better. I think I gave you the task at one point. I gave you the homework at one point to say, when we see the negative, something negative, and when we get angry at somebody, try to see behind this immediate thing, I would do better. So it's arrogance. Yeah. So instead of having compassion for these people who make a lot of mistakes, by knowing that by them making mistakes, they will, they will suffer in the future, because the consequences of their mistakes will come back at one point, and we get angry. So I think Shantideva, in one of the verses, he says, this would be like getting angry at children when they make mistakes, because he calls these people who have no idea about karma, who have no idea how to transform their mind, he calls them childish. So why would you be angry at them? Please have compassion for them. But again, compassion doesn't mean you let them do everything that they want to do. So when we talk about compassion, we always pair it with kindness, but there's also a form of compassion which it can be quite wrathful, but not to hurt the other person, but in order to protect the person. Like a mother or a father, when the child doesn't do what they ask them to do, then they start to, maybe the voice gets louder in order for the children to be protected. Yeah. Okay. That's difficult. That's really difficult, because with us, when it's anger, it's usually frustration and anger. Yes, Elisheva.
I just want to share that lately I find that when there is a situation with a conflict, so if I look outside, there are many aspects of the picture, but if I concentrate on the feeling, then it shrinks, it becomes smaller. I don't take care of what happened outside, just what I feel. Yes, for example, I went today to pass the test of my car, every year. So I went, it was the second time, because I had a recall. You know what is it, recall? When the company asks you to come and fix something.
Yeah.
So, and then they need to put it in the computer.
Yeah.
They didn't do it, so the next time I came, it's still blocked.
Yeah.
So I said, what, again? I wait outside. And and then I said, oh, I have I need to practice much more. And I focused on my anger.
Yeah.
And then luck, in one phone call, she opened it, and then I passed it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's no guarantee that you will pass.
Yeah, I had luck.
If you are not getting angry, but there's one guarantee that by getting angry, it will not get faster. This is one thing.
But the concentrating on the feeling,
exactly,
the story.
Yeah, this is it. Because why? Because, you see the trigger. If you take away the story from the trigger, this is what we talked about also last time. If you take away the story, this is so bad and they should do this and why don't they do that, blah, 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 then the anger has no more fuel. It stops burning, because the moment you take the mind away from the object, that's it. But the problem is ego, or I, and anger wants to stay there, because it wants to continue, because it gives us a lot of energy, we're quite righteous, or as Il says, we think we're better than them, and all these kind of things. So this is why it's important to see all these stories behind what these delusions actually tell us. Yeah? So this is exactly Elisheva. So this is the right way to do. The moment you feel...
You can call me Eli.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. That's much easier for me. But I could also get used to call you Elisheva, because it's a very nice name. So the moment we start to get a habit of being mindful, and you feel what is going on, the anger very quickly disappears. Situation is still the same. Yeah, we shouldn't have an expectation that then people do what we want them to do. It could also be that they totally ignore us because we're not screaming at them, especially in Israel. So, but even Israeli people, I assure you, everybody prefers to work with somebody who is kind to them. Everybody likes kindness. Yeah, might take a little bit longer until they understand that you're just a Bodhisattva and not a friar, and that you're not, you're not afraid of getting angry. But I don't know. I really think that with kindness, everything would go much better. Yeah, and we are the ones who have to start, because other people might not start. So let's try to do some awareness, like this. What Elisheva did, she noticed she was getting angry. She let go of the story outside, and then she came inside and she watched. So this is what we'll start with, that you look, how do I feel? What is present in my heart? It's good if you close your eyes, you sit with a straight back, but relaxed, to connect with your body. And to really watch your inner world, the kind of inner weather. What's the weather like inside there? As if you would be really watching the weather. You know that you don't want to influence anything, you don't want to change anything, because first we have to really learn to accept things the way they are, so that we can see, instead of kind of creating, aggression against the aggression, or fear against the fear, desire against desire, or aversion against desire. That doesn't help. The first thing is always to allow. Everything can be there. Everything has a right to be there. Everything is part of you. That's what we're working with. And everything can be transformed. And we need to know how to have access to our positive sides. So that can be done with words. So again, don't manipulate anything, just think these words. And then look if something, look what happens. Nothing needs to change, but just look what happens. And you can think how wonderful it would be if I had happiness and the causes of happiness. Because we know we have the potential to be happy. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness. Just to give ourselves the permission to be happy, knowing that as an unhappy person, the only person you can make happy when you're unhappy is your enemy, and that's negative rejoicing. We have a right to be happy. Not happy on the back of others, but, happy in the sense of open, relaxed, joyful. How wonderful it would be if I would be able to live that potential. I would have happiness and the causes of happiness. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness. And in case you see that your life is really good and you're very fortunate, then you just rejoice. The same way as you would be happy when you find out that a very good friend of yours is also happy. So then in case maybe you discover that you're not happy and your life is very difficult, how wonderful it would be if I would be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, which are my wrong views and delusions. Don't go into chatter, just this, just a wish. You can use Hebrew words if you want. How wonderful it would be if I would be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. It's a bit more intensive. Self-interest is okay, because all of you are Bodhisattva, so you want to be free from suffering, so you can lead others to that state. And even if you don't have that intention, if you suffer, you cannot be there for others. And very often you become aggressive, either towards yourself or towards others. There's no virtue in suffering. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, which are my negative actions done through my negative emotions. And now the step, I will free myself from suffering and the causes of suffering. We're not blaming the others anymore. When we feel that we have this urge to free ourselves from suffering and the causes of suffering, we have to make that step. It's my responsibility. I will free myself from suffering and the causes of suffering. That can give us a lot of self-confidence, knowing what we want to do, knowing what we want to use this life for. But then we notice that it's very difficult. So as a Buddhist, you would ask for blessing to the Buddha. You would visualize the Buddha as an example of having freed himself from all suffering and the causes of suffering. And you would ask for inspiration and blessing, because we know alone, to do this alone, without methods, without support, without blessing, it's impossible. So if you have such an object, it doesn't have to be the Buddha, but something that inspires you, something that you trust in what this kind of person or method or system says, you visualize that energy or that form, and you ask for blessing. Please inspire me, or please bless me to be able to free myself from suffering and the causes of suffering. If you want, you can visualize the energy or the form of Shakyamuni Buddha. If you want, you can visualize that light is coming from either the energy or from the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha, enters your crown and totally fills your body. Kind of dissolves all negativities all wrong views. Everything that is a hindrance for us to be happy. I know that many people think that, Buddhism is not a religion, then it sounds kind of strange that we're asking for blessings from the Buddha. But it really helps, especially when you're stuck. I mean, there's many stories where you kind of cry out to Tara or to the Buddha or to Jushi or Chenresig or whatever, because otherwise it's true. Otherwise we're totally alone, and it's very, very difficult to do. So it's not, the Buddha is not a god. He's not omnipotent, but the moment we visualize the Buddha, now this is for the Buddhists, or any other form that you trust, that they can inspire you. They cannot take the suffering away from you. This is not possible. But the moment you have such a source that you trust, you visualize that source, your mind becomes one with that source, and you're kind of influenced by that mind. Yeah, because you see, blessings we receive the whole time. Every time you see an object, you hear something or whatever, that object blesses us. It has an influence on our mind. We just don't notice it. Yeah, so that's the blessings of the Buddhas. When we visualize them or when we think about them, then they can bless us by influencing or inspiring us by seeing that, this is possible to do. And the trust in the Buddha's teachings, of course, you will get that trust if you start to study it, think about it, if you want to apply it, and then to use it. Yeah, to really use it, to really apply it. If it's just in your head, then not much point, because then all your delusions are still there. But if you start to use antidotes for these negative emotions, then you can see that it works. As Elisheva said, it really works. With anger, it's like almost a miracle how quickly it dissolves. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come back next time. Yeah, it will still come back next time, because we have a lot of imprints. We have a lot of these seeds. So whenever the situation comes, then the seed ripens. Okay? So these, first do this kind of, it's part of the 4 immeasurables. To first do it with yourself until you feel something is really, really important. Because otherwise you kind of concentrated on others and you want them to be happy and you want them to be free from suffering. But at the same time, you're full of low self-esteem and fear and anger or jealousy because they have more than you have, or these kind of things. You have absolutely no equanimity. Then it's very difficult to really reach out to others without wanting anything, without expecting anything. And like that. It's okay. It's totally okay to first look after yourself. And this sometimes we forget, because especially if you are Mahayana Buddhists, I mean, why do you want to be well? Because you want to be of benefit to others. So it's not even selfishness when you think like this. I wish people would be more selfish and create causes for their happiness. I tell you, the world would be such a better place. People should have more happiness. Because the more suffering we have, the more conflicts, the more like this really kind of absolute victim and absolute aggressor, and then attack against each other, and and then it's all the conflicts. And this view that if there is suffering or pain, or life is not going the way you thought it should go. Yeah, we all have this kind of idea that we should have no financial problems, that we should always find the food that we want, that everybody should always be kind and nice to us, that we should have a house that is really comfortable to live in, that we should have a government that is really doing a proper job. We all have these ideas, isn't it? Like it's due to me, because why? Because this is very deep sitting kind of expectations. And this is what we're looking for. And it's going into the 8-worldly dharmas. And then we have, of course, if we have this idea, if I had this and this and this, I would be happy. And then, of course, if I don't have it, I'm unhappy. But then we come to the verses now. Shantideva tells us exactly the opposite. Pain is not suffering. Not having money is not suffering. Not people not respecting you, that is not suffering. If you resist it, then it becomes suffering. Pain plus resistance to the pain equals suffering. You can be very happy about the pain. You know, there's people who pay money to sex workers in order to get beaten up. Now you can say it's perverse, but it exists. If you have some kind of, tumor somewhere, but it's benign, it's not, how do you call it? Malignant. It's not malignant and you have to go and cut it out. I mean, the pain from the operation is much bigger than the tumor, but you're happy because it's out. So it's our wrong views that in order to be happy, I need to have a life where people respect me, I have the job I want, I have enough money to do whatever I want, I can go wherever I want. These kind of the suffering from not being able to go to the theater. I mean, come on, this is really bourgeois suffering. But people suffer from that because of the virus, that the theaters were closed, the cinemas were closed and all this. Or, this old lady who kind of came. I'm not saying she is not depressed. Of course she was depressed because we have these expectations. It should not be like this. So she saw me in the street and she said, can I please talk to you? Because nobody wants to talk to me because, older people are the risk group and all around this stuff. And she said, I don't belong to the risk group. I'm sure she was about 90 years old. But totally convinced she doesn't belong to the risk group. She said, oh, I'm really depressed because for 2 months now I had to eat alone. And when I see these people in India who have nothing to eat, or this woman who was, I think it was Geshe Dorje Damdrul, who told this story about this woman who gave birth. Or was it Geshe Tashi? I can't remember. She gave birth while they were trying to go home. Nobody to help them, no money. She gave birth in the middle of the road and they continued walking right after with the baby and already having 2 smaller children. And then we're so spoiled, we get depressed when we have to eat alone. In case you are depressed when you have to eat alone, I tell you one thing, what you can do. Stop eating for 2 or 3 days. Don't eat anything. I tell you, you wouldn't care whether you have to eat alone or not. You'll be so happy that you have food and appreciative. Yeah, especially if you don't do it as an experiment. Let's say, all the shops closed now. You don't have anything at home. There's nothing else to do but, not to eat. And then after 3 days, you're not waiting for your partner to come so you can eat together in a tete-a-tete with the candles and all this. You eat. You don't care whether you're alone or not. So it's all these expectations that we have. It's due to me. So I should have it. And we forget about karma. We totally forget about karma. So, my dear Tipila, can we have the text? Is it possible? Otherwise, I just read it. I have it here. I have it printed out. We are at verse 12. Oh, by the way, I'll ask later when the text is not there anymore. Did you do the homework? The homework was equanimity, that we see how when somebody that we like is in a difficult situation and somebody that we dislike is in a difficult situation, that we react differently. Did you check that? Did you see that? Is it true? I hope you did. You did. And then what did you do? Yeah, it's good that you laugh. It's good that you see how ridiculous I am. I'm exactly like verse 11. where it says, oh, I have it in the other house, I think, because I don't know if you noticed, I moved house. You don't have the lovely statues anymore. I'm living in somebody else's house at the moment. Okay, verse 11, for myself and for my friends, I want no suffering, no disrespect. You know, we think that it's due to us. We think it's normal when we have no financial problems, enough to eat, we can do whatever we want. We think this is normal. It's absolutely not normal. Most of the beings on this planet, they don't have these things that we have. No harsh words and nothing unpleasant. But for my enemies, it is the opposite. We actually rejoice when they don't have what they want. So then it's good to see the situation and see how ridiculous this is. We are all the same. We all want happiness. Nobody wants to suffer. Yeah. And by rejoicing, actually, when they're not having what they want, we actually create the karma that we lose what we want. Okay, verse 12. So you have to go down a little bit. The causes of happiness sometimes occur. The causes for suffering are frequent. Without suffering, there is no renunciation. Therefore, mind, you should stand firm. I think you understood the text. Yeah, so we can go back so I can see you. I prefer seeing you than the text. So exactly. So I can read it again. I have it printed out here. So you understand what it says, yeah? There's lots of causes for suffering. There's very few causes for happiness. Without suffering, there is no renunciation. Therefore, mind, you should stand firm. So again, this is somebody who has said, like we have said in the reflection, how wonderful it would be if I were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I will free myself from suffering and the causes of suffering. And he goes one step further, you know, because we're already at chapter 6, chapter 1, and chapter 1, 2, 3, where he decides to become a Bodhisattva. So he says, mind, stand firm. If I only have happiness, if life is only easy, I have absolutely no wish to get out of samsara. Yeah, there is absolutely no renunciation. So renunciation, when you hear the word renunciation, how does it make you feel? You're inspired when you hear renunciation? Does it seem like, you know, when you say, oh, I should get more money or more, I don't know, a better telephone or what? We're inspired to find a good thing. You see what I mean? When you have this, you want something like a new telephone, then you have a lot of interest. How do I get a good telephone? And you start to see and you start to explore the telephones. When the mind says you have no without suffering, there's no renunciation. Meaning, when there's suffering, it will be renunciation. Then we should be happy when there's suffering. The advantage of the suffering, he's telling us now. Yeah. Do we react like this? So how do you feel when you hear renunciation? Does it seem something that's a good thing to get?
Not really.
Not really, because how does it sound, renunciation? What's the Hebrew word for renunciation? Oni, what is the Hebrew word for renunciation? Ronnie remains silent. How do you use renunciation? I'm sure you use it when you do philosophy or, you know, Lamrim, like the middle scope where you develop.
I'm just saying I was never sure about the exact translation. It's kind of giving up on certain things or not letting things drag you in, not giving in to things. I wouldn't know exactly.
It's very good what you're saying, because that's what it means. Giving up certain things. What? Giving up the things that create suffering. So, you know, everybody know, most of you know, I love chips.
Not anymore.
I love chips. Now, Leora knows the incident when we were on to Naisamim and we had lunch somewhere in a what was it called, the cafe? Landwehr's cafe. And I, of course, I said, okay, I haven't had chips for a long time. So I ordered chips, and then it also said, because I also thought I need something healthy, so I thought I ordered some vegetables, and it said crispy cauliflower. So me being Swiss, you know, I didn't know that crispy means also deep fried. So I ate both of it. Do you remember, Leora? So I ate both of it. It was very delicious. I had absolutely no problem eating both dishes. I think all of it. Well, what happened? Next morning, I woke up with a huge headache. And I knew, actually, when I ate both of them, that I would have a headache, because this is what happens when I eat too much oil because of my liver, because of having been an alcoholic. So renunciation means I have understood chips and crispy cauliflower gives me a headache. So what I'm giving up, I want to give up the headache. I don't want to give up the chips and the crispy cauliflower, but because I don't want the headache, I don't want the suffering from the headache, I am able to give up the chips and the cauliflower. I still eat chips from time to time, but it's quite rare. I mean, less and less. I'm not so attached to them anymore. Because also with attachment or desire, if you are able to see this, to really understand, like that was massive. I mean, the headache was really massive, and I had to teach. So if you really see the suffering, then the pain of giving it up is less big, is less sharp, or is you have more energy giving it up. Yeah, but the understanding has to come very, very deep within. This is why we meditate so much on the, you know, the 3 sufferings, the 6 suffering, the 8 sufferings. And this is when people say, you Buddhists, you always talk about suffering. Why do you always talk about suffering? Because I need to know that if I eat too many chips plus crispy cauliflower, I get a massive headache the next day. So I'm not punishing myself. You know, I'm not saying, oh no, you have not been a good girl. You're not getting the reward of what you like, which is the chips. Yeah. So you're not really giving up pleasure when you renounce. You are giving up the causes for the suffering, which is the attachment to the pleasure, or you're giving up the wrong view that the pleasure or the good feeling from eating chips and crispy cauliflower. I'm pretty sure some of you now go like, how can she like that, isn't it? I tell you why I like it. It's my karma. I tell you why we like things. So, one thinks so much about the consequences of our actions done through our negative emotions that one really gets fed up with it, at least from time to time. So please, you know, it's lovely to always meditate on love and compassion and study about emptiness and all this. But when we lose the purpose, why do we do that? In order to develop renunciation. And renunciation is giving up on something that will never give us what we want, meaning lasting happiness and contentment. Yeah. Why is it so difficult to develop renunciation? Because we have so much attachment that we don't see as attachment. You see, when we talk about attachment, people think it's when you're addicted to something, then it is attachment. Every time, and this is, I know it's quite harsh when I say these things, like yesterday or the day before yesterday, we talked about this, and you know, she said like, how can I enjoy life now? I said, well, you can enjoy everything as long as you understand that the good feeling that you have from having contact with this object does not come from the object. The good feeling that comes from having contact with the object is depending on a positive action from the past. And this is our biggest mistake that we're making, because it appears as if the pleasant experience from eating, I stay with the chips, okay? Because I don't like ice cream and I don't like chocolate. So I can't use that, usually classical example for me. So it appears as if the contact with this object is creating the pleasant feeling. It appears like this. But if that would be the real cause for it, I could eat chips all the time and nothing else, and the pleasant feeling would always be the same. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So what appears to be true is actually not true, because then every time we make contact with the same object, it should produce the same pleasant feeling. And we all know how it is. If you have too much of it, it goes into disgust. Unless you are heavily addicted, like alcohol and stuff like this, you know. Now I'm not talking about addiction. I'm just talking about thinking that the happiness I have comes because of enjoying things, because of consuming things. But it only gives you a good feeling when there is a positive karmic imprint ripening. Pleasant feelings are karmic results from positive actions. Unpleasant feelings are karmic consequences or karmic results from negative actions. And this we cannot check. This is the problem. When it comes to karmic results, we have to trust what the Buddha says. Bruno says, I think it is especially difficult in our countries, in our places. Maybe if I go to live in a I have to open it. Maybe if I'm going to live in a retreat place or a country like Nepal, India, near the Dalai Lama, I'm not sure. You know, especially people who do, well, Maya's been living in Dharamsala for a long time, you know. So I don't know if the attachment lessens. No, you get attached to other things, yeah. What, Leora, what did you want to say? You had your hand up?
When we read this verse, two things came to
Wait, I turn on the loudspeakers again. Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
When I read this verse 12, two things came to my mind. First of all, one translation for renunciation is definite emerge.
Definite emergence, yes, that's from Lama Yeshe. Wanting to get out of samsara.
So I need to understand suffering very well.
Yes.
If we want renunciation.
That's what I'm saying.
That could be one explanation. But then it says, mind be firm. So I thought, when we spoke about bodhicitta, you explained to us that bodhicitta is such a huge thing that that's why Shantideva starts with the benefits of it. Because it actually, I can't understand bodhicitta. It's really mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it looks like people, it's crazy. So I need to know the benefit. The same with renunciation, it's not that huge, but it's huge enough.
Yeah.
And we need patience and forbearance and diligence, and we need all that. And that's what the meaning of mind be firm, because it is your advantage.
Yeah, no, here it says he means mind be firm, meaning don't get angry at the suffering.
Yeah, be patient, you have to develop, to take patience.
And don't kind of run around trying to get rid of the conditions for the suffering if you're not getting rid of the causes for the suffering. Okay, like somebody who hits you with a stick, he is just a contributing condition. He is not the substantial cause. The substantial cause for an unpleasant feeling that we carry with us from a negative action. And this is what we have to trust. This is the thing, because we can't really check. And how can you trust it when the things you can check? You know, if the Buddha says life is dissatisfying, I mean, come on, it's true. There is not one person on this planet who can truly say, I'm always happy. Because how can you be happy when you see all the suffering in the world? How can you be happy? Like really happy? Yeah, it's impossible. Yes, Eileen.
I think it's a little bit hard to think about it because I mean, I grew up in this atmosphere that there is no such thing as total happiness. There is only like small moments of happiness, and usually when I was taught this, they meant like pleasure moments, or like happiness is being with your family on Friday night, or happiness is going on holiday. And even though I had some horrible holidays during life, it was always like, this is what we're working for. We're suffering the whole year long so that we can go on holiday. It's very hard to really, for me, to really believe that there is such a thing as complete happiness that is not dependent on these other factors, other people, other...
Right. This is where the meditation comes in. If you have, because if you meditate frequently, Maya, you can afterwards, I finish what I'm saying here. Because when you meditate frequently, you do have moments of total absence of negative emotions for short time. Problem is, then the ego comes in and goes, wow, what's that? And grasps it, and then it's gone. You know, and it's not only meditation, by the way, excuse me, I made a mistake. It's also because I remember when I used to ski and I used to climb. It's when we are not in our thoughts. It's when we are totally concentrated on what we are doing, and we forget the past and we forget the future. Yeah, and then we are totally there. And Bruno, you know, it can be just jumping around in the waves for 3 hours, for example, like you did in where were we? In up there in the north, in the sea. So it can be that, because once your mind kind of decides this is a good thing, and you let go of everything else, then that's it. You are happy. And then, you know, it's good to remember these moments. Or also, for example, when a good friend of yours, when they say, today I'm really happy, short moment of total absence of like wanting something else, the space to experience that space. Because what happens with us when we experience these states of mind that would be our nature, we're not conscious. They just pass. I mean, how many, we notice our anger, we notice our jealousy, we notice our desire. How many of you have ever kind of almost a bit wondering, say, oh, absence of negative emotions?
Never.
We don't notice it. And the thing is also, the kind of happiness that we know is like, whoa, yeah? The kind of happiness that the Buddha is talking about is free from wrong views, seeing things the way they are. And you know what? We are afraid of it. We think like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so boring. Yeah, because we are attached to our negative emotions, because they make us being somebody. You're angry, you are somebody, you know. You're more courageous, or you're like righteous, and all these kind. Look at the people who are now in the streets. Yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't be in the streets in America. I mean, it's the way that black people are being treated in the States. I mean, it's like, yeah. So like that, but the way they behave, yeah, as if they could like really change something. Bruno again is giving us his practicing sport. I could feel absent of worries for a very small period. Yeah, exactly. But you see, we can't practice sport all the time. This is it. But it's a good example to see that when we are concentrated. So some of you might go surfing. Yeah. So what you do in the meditation, you try to generate the same mind state, kind of not getting lost in thoughts, but having one object and being there. So you don't need outside objects anymore to attain that kind of state. So then, so then we start to get confidence that this is possible. Or how else could we get confidence? Is by looking at people like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example, or like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who his shamatha or his concentration is so developed that he doesn't need to sleep anymore, for example. And he's always in a good mood, and he's always laughing. And he never goes like, oh my gosh, I'm totally exhausted, you know, it's like I only slept 4 hours this night. He doesn't sleep at all. And he's always there for others, you know, constantly doing things, prayers, practices. Anybody has seen this little video on the lake when he's placing the the water. I mean, so sweet, you know. I mean, if I would be embarrassed to do things like this, you know, have a rubber boat and put flags on it with mantras, and then a big plastic board with mantras so that the fish get blessed and all this. But he trusts that this is working, and he's doing it. I trust that this is also working. But when I go and bury my worms from the animal liberation, I go and bury them somewhere where nobody sees me, you know. It's like absolutely no ego. He doesn't care if people think it's stupid or it doesn't work or he's superstitious and all that. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on the FBMT website. It's Lama Zopa Rinpoche going on a rubber boat with his monks and with Annette. You know, I know Annette really well, so she's from Switzerland. She's from the same house that I live in now. So it's really sweet. So like this. So or also sometimes where we also can be very concentrated in doing something for others that we really want to help and we really want to do it, and we totally forget ourselves. So these are the moments that are like a very, very, very small taste of what liberation from negative emotions could be. And then I think also, you know, when we look at the methods to liberate ourselves from negative emotions, I mean, in what way can they be harmful? When Shantideva is telling us, you know, mind be firm, now don't get angry at the suffering or the person who makes you suffer, because it's with the suffering you're exhausting negative karma, not really totally kind of purifying negative karma, but one seed is gone. You can develop compassion when there's suffering and all this. So when we, out of compassion, when we want to help somebody, we become one with that person, you know. Or when we see reality a little bit more, a little bit clearer. Like, can you remember we did a reflection on first, you know, I'm me, I'm so special. Remember? And I asked you to check the feeling, how you feel when you think like this. And then we took Einstein's wisdom, where he says, human being is just a part of the universe. Yeah, and then I'm just a tiny, tiny, tiny part. There also, we get quite close to that. There's no ego. There is just, we feel this being connected with others. Yeah. Our wrong view of thinking that there's an inherently existing self makes us an individual. And just the word individual is totally wrong. Individual means not dividable. We are part of a whole. We're not one thing standing there inherently on its own, not depending on others. We are a part of something. And even as an individual, I can be, you know, I can cut my arms, I can cut my head, and I have many parts. Individual would mean one part which cannot be divided. I mean, this is totally ridiculous. I don't know who came up with that idea that we are an individual. Maybe people who study philosophy would know that. I don't know. Okay. So, here it goes about kind of rejecting pain. Yeah, he says suffering, I think also, but actually what he talks about, to reject, to say that, you know, in our mind stream, we have a lot of causes for situations who are not 100% satisfying. And that is true. We try very hard, as Elil said. We spent money to go on a holiday. We spent money to buy a phone. It's very expensive. Then we lose it. Then it's a lot of suffering, you know, I saw at one point, I can't remember, we were also on a holiday in the Caribbean islands, and, you know, and there was a group, like a charter group, you know, they have a guide and all this. And so the plane didn't go because there was a hurricane. So people in this group, they were so nasty to her. They made her responsible for the plane not being able to go because they booked a flight on that day. I was like, and I think I even interfered. I wasn't a Buddhist then, so definitely wasn't a nun, but I said, please leave her alone. You know, she is not responsible for your happiness. This is it. You know, you can see people who book a holiday, they make the guide responsible for their having a good time and for their happiness, or the hotel or the food, or I don't know what. Yeah. So Shantideva is telling us, you are responsible for your own happiness. So mind, stay firm. Don't become unhappy about the suffering. There's a lot of good sides in the suffering. Okay, so this is what he's saying. And to let go, you know, obsessively thinking about this person did that and that person did that. Have you ever noticed that? How we lose sleep and how we can't let go of the situation? Yeah, when somebody's harming us, or we're jealous of somebody, or all this. So is it, you see, when somebody harms you with words or even hitting you with the stick or whatever, so that's one moment. But then getting angry or feeling hurt, it's like, this is, we are doing it. It's not the other person doing it anymore. But it feels so natural to be angry and to feel hurt and to feel terrible and all this. You know, there's this nice story about the Buddha. He tells somebody shot an arrow at somebody, a poisoned arrow, and which is like these words that people sometimes shoot at us. So, but luckily the arrow didn't, you know, fell down in front of the person. But then the person kind of takes up the arrow and goes, oh, wow, this arrow is really bad. I wonder, is it poisonous? Yeah, I'll try. If it's poisonous, pong. Oh, yeah, it's poisonous. Tack. Oh, yeah, it's poisonous. This is when we keep thinking about the situation. You know, sometimes even in the middle of the night, the arrow is right next to our bed. And we wake up with these thoughts and these ideas, what they do to us. We take the arrow just to see if it hurts. Oh, yes, it hurts. That's what we do. This is how stupid we are. Because we don't see the benefit of the suffering. Yeah, here Shantideva talks about the benefit of the suffering. So if, as Yora says, you know, and she says bodhicitta is such a big thing. Yes, I know. I also don't have bodhicitta, but I'm very inspired by it. I want to have it, you know. So sometimes I have short glimpses also when I just think in the morning, wow, I want to be of benefit to all sentient beings. May I be able to be of benefit to all sentient beings? I'm very realistic. I know that I can't do that, but I have confidence that I can achieve that. Because now again, you know, coming back to that thing, when we look, what can I lose? What can I lose when I go on this path? Even though there is no enlightenment, but as I go along practicing generosity, if you practice generosity, it makes you happy. If you give voluntarily, it makes you very happy immediately. It's much easier than meditation. Meditation takes a long time until you have some happy feelings come. I don't know if you noticed. Most of it is suffering. Most of it is pain. Most of it is boredom. But it's worthwhile. Yeah, it's really worthwhile to go through that. It's the pains of suffering. So generosity, if you give freely and happily by thinking, I have something to give. Isn't that wonderful? You know, and you give quality, not the trash that you don't want anymore. Of course, it doesn't make you happy. And you give big, not as small as possible. As small as possible, if you give, that makes you happy for a very short time. But try it out. Give as much as you can to whomever. I don't care to whom you give. Yeah. Try to see when you give without fear. When we give, we always are afraid because we don't understand karma. Yeah. We don't understand that practicing generosity is creating in the future, and it might be in a future life, is creating affluence. Yeah. Then next one is what? Ethical conduct. Wow, ethical conduct creates so much happiness. Harming others, being nasty to others, stealing, lying, and all this. It creates so much suffering, especially when somebody finds out. Yeah, and it creates suffering for the future. It makes you uneasy, it makes you nervous. If you're honest and you're not harming anybody, there's nothing to fear. If suffering comes, it's because it's past karma ripening. That's okay. But you don't have anything to fear for the future. And this is what we should be careful now, that we're not creating causes for our next rebirth in a lower state. I mean, if not now, when then? And I think renunciation, when we see that, you know, when I was young, like 20, America was the land where everybody, the country where everybody wanted to go to. Yeah, and we all went, and we hired a car, and we drove around, and we had a lot of pleasure. I mean, if you give me a free ticket to the States at the moment, I don't think I would want to go. If I have something to do there, I would go, but on a holiday, I mean, definitely not. And it can, you see, it happened to the States. It can happen to any country. I tell you, Switzerland at the moment is like an island, yeah, where everything is like, we're so lucky. We're so fortunate. This is why when we read this verse here in Switzerland, people said, what is he talking about? You know, I said the causes of happiness are sometimes occur, or sometimes also it says are few, but the causes for suffering are very many. So the group I have here with this in Bern, they said, that's not true. You know, and I asked them to make a list. So we had flip chart, and I said, okay, now you write down your causes for happiness. So it was going to the movies on a Tuesday, okay? Going with the dog for a walk in the forest, this and that. And a few wrote down being able to withstand my negative emotions and not to act on them. But most of them, what they wrote are not causes, they are just conditions for happiness. Yeah. The causes for happiness are our positive actions from the past. Causes for suffering are our negative actions from the past. So in Israel, maybe this is it's a country thing. If you live in Israel, do you think causes for happiness are many and causes for suffering are few?
No, I think that the problem is that we are talking again about happiness, but it's not really happiness, it's pleasure.
It's not really
Causes
happiness.
for pleasure are
Exactly.
many.
It's exactly. So you see, like if going to the forest for a walk with the dog, if you can't, and you think this is happiness and you can't do it anymore, that's it, you suffer. Because you think the happiness comes from there, but the happiness comes from positive actions. Yeah. So in order to practice bodhicitta, as I said, you practice generosity. Already now it makes you happy if you give freely. On top of it, it creates a situation where you don't have to worry about being sustained, about being able to survive in future lives. Ethical conduct means you get a life where people will not harm you. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Patience. You will get a beautiful body if you practice patience, they say. Yeah. A cause for practicing patience is a beautiful body, and people will trust you also. Enthusiasm, enthusiasm, joy can be learned. Very often people say, oh, I can only be joyful when all the suffering is gone. No, you practice, you can be joyful when you understand that, for example, suffering is exhausting negative karma. And it helps me to go on this path because I have no other choice. And somehow, I think we all know it. If we want to be happy, we have no choice but to work with the mind, to create happiness in the mind. And a happy mind is a mind that is full of love, full of patience, full of compassion, full of understanding. There is no real, truly self-existent I. Yeah. And this is possible. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama. I know there's not so many people, living people, who are an example, but there's a few. There's Montutu. Yeah. I mean, the suffering that he went through, Nelson Mandela, the suffering that these people went through, they were joyful, happy people. And if they can do it, why can't we do it? Give me a good example why they can't, why we cannot do it if they can do it. Because we're not practicing. I give you the example. Because we're not applying the methods. Yeah. So,
Anna, can I ask something about that?
Yes, please do.
Because it's something that I've been thinking about the whole week. By the way, thank you for the last teachings. YouTube is really helping when you cannot attend the classes. I had teachings about death and rebirth, And then somehow we got into that teachings about like that you should protect your mind and your body and so on, right? And then I thought, I had a very long discussion with a Dharma friend of mine afterwards, that, you know, we have to also protect our mind. You know, sometimes I felt like when I had anger about something that has happened, when I felt like things are not happening the way and people are being hurtful, and I got angry because I'm not enlightened yet and I have to work with my mind, right? So immediately, you know, sometimes the answers was like, okay, maybe you should try the 8 verses of mind training every day. And then I felt like, and then, you know, the thing of like giving, for me, the one that was very problematic and made my life quite difficult was like, give to other the victory, you know? And it's like, for me, it was sort of like I'm beating myself twice in my mind because I'm not able to do that yet, especially when I feel that what they're doing is harmful, not just for myself, but for other people as well. And then the second thing is I felt like I'm a failure, you know, I'm failing again and again. And then I thought, and then we had a really long discussion about it. And then sometimes I think, you know, that we need to give more love to ourselves. You know, maybe the first step is just say to yourself, it's okay that you're like this, and send yourself love. And sometimes I feel that it is something that I lack. You know, I have lacking of that. Because immediately I'm being sent to 8 verses of mind training, think about everyone else, think about how everyone else is suffering, and I feel like I'm not there yet. And there is some things that I feel I can, you know, especially, and this is with my mind, especially with people who are practicing Dharma. It's more easy for me to forgive and have compassion towards Bibi Netanyahu, who I'm having a lot of trouble with him, than to people who are in a Dharma center, supposedly be Buddhists, and are hurting people. You know, or like Dharma community. And I find it, and I know that it's my mind. Right?
Yeah, of course, it's always our mind. But this is, you know, this is why I started today with may I be happy. I didn't even include others because I know that this is lacking. This is definitely lacking. We don't dare to look after ourselves. We think it's selfish, but it's not, because the motivation behind is to be there for others. So that's okay. Yeah. So when we talk about, you know, situations like this, what is so frustrating? One thing is, okay, I know that is very frustrating. People who pretend to be kind of Dharma practitioners, maybe they are, I don't know. This is also, we kind of, it's like we have to, it's good that we start to understand the Buddha didn't really tell us how, or didn't give us methods how to change others. But he gave us methods how to change our mind. Yeah. So then in a situation like this, I think your first task is to take care of your anger that you're not able to change something. And you know what, because I also, everybody who's been working in Dharma centers, especially Tushita, has been in that situation, because it's such an intense place. It's so much to do. I don't know if it's from there, but anyway. So, and people are stressed and all this. And then I had this thing about, you know, getting angry, and the anger, I could do better, all this. And then all of a sudden, sometimes when you practice, from one side, a kind of a thought came and said, hey, you're not responsible about them. You're not, it's not your responsibility to teach them how to behave. Because that's kind of, you know, underneath is this kind of thing that I should teach them how to behave. So I said, I'm not the Dharma police. It's okay. You know, they want to behave like this. It's their problem. And it's especially, I think it's especially difficult when we see that people are hurting other people, but they have a very good reputation, or they're very famous, or they're very, you know, very people, a lot of praise and this and that, but I know how they really are. So this is the difficulty about it. But yeah. So I think I told the situation, I got angry at Tushita at one point. I got really angry, and I couldn't deal with my anger against everybody there, because the way I thought they shouldn't behave. So I moved out. Yeah, because this is what my teacher told me. I said, well, you know, he didn't say move out. He said, go for, next time you get angry, go for a walk. So I did. So I got angry and I was going towards a chai shop. I hadn't even arrived at the chai shop yet. Maya knows where the chai shop is. So, and I thought, I'm going to move out. I need to get out of this situation. I cannot deal with it while I am here. And so this thing, you know, go for a walk, I had to first understand, I cannot stay in that situation. I can't work with my mind. It's too intense. So I moved out and I went down to the library, and, you know, by miracle, I got a room. Usually it was like 2 months waiting list or something. But she said, yeah, there's one free. So I moved out. And then living down at the library, one thing I thought, then I also thought that it was also my fault, that I was also part of the problem, because I was also very stiff on what I wanted and how I wanted things to be. And the other thing is I saw, actually, yeah, Tushita is not ideal, but I still prefer it to the library, where you had parties every night until 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, like Tibetan boy looking for Western girl kind of thing. And I moved back after 2 months and it was okay. But sometimes it's really good to go away if you can from the situation. Yeah. I don't know, any of you know the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva? I think it's verse, I can't remember, 2 or 3, where it says, go away from your homeland. Because in your homeland is like, you know, attachment towards friends and anger towards enemies is really, really big. But he doesn't mean that you have to physically leave your homeland, but to get away or to distract yourself or not to be totally caught up in the situation. Yeah. And sometimes when I was really angry, you know, at least just the thought, oh, I wish I could react to this situation without anger. Just that, with compassion for myself. You see, not acting out anger is not, what it is actually compassion for our future self, so that we don't get the consequences. And again and again and again to think about the disadvantage of anger.
Yeah, I guess this is why, for me, this is something that is beneficial to hear. I feel sometimes there is a lack of sane distance. Of course, I know that I'm seeing things in not clear way when I'm, you know, and of course I'm taking responsibility, because sometimes I could be stiff as well. You know, I have my Israeli character, you know, very like this, and not everyone is like this as well.
Yeah.
But the compassion part, I think that sometimes I found it like, you know, the thing of like, you have to be humble, you have to be humble, you have to be humble, you have to be humble. And sometimes I feel, but this is, you know, this is things that I get. And sometimes I feel that when you were saying all the time you have to be humble, somehow it got mixed with having love for yourself. And so it's not being emphasized, I think, more than it should. And you know, it was a really, really long dialogue that I had with that friend of mine. And I feel, that sometimes, and then people use it against you, you know, to justify, I don't know, I mean, it's... I know,
but the thing is, you know, when you get angry at somebody who is angry anyway, you give them the perfect tools to attack you back. This is it, you know. And then my arrogance helped, because at one point I thought, okay, you are not going to make me angry anymore. And tuck, I was angry. So it's like, but sometimes it helps, but it really helps to if you can distance yourself from situation or for the person, and then at the distance work with it, you know, to see the complexity of the whole situation also, maybe to understand where these people are coming from, and to think even, you know, also arrogance, but it's okay to think, oh my gosh, they're even more blind than I am. They think they're good Dharma practitioners and they're not doing what they're doing. Maybe they know, you know, as I said, this is why I also said, these things we don't admit. We don't admit arrogance and we don't admit jealousy. So that's why it's very difficult to kind of work with it, because we don't want to admit it. This we are ashamed. Yeah, so anger and detachment is easier to work with. But we are all where we are standing. And, you know, I was in a very bad situation, not at Tushita also, that I was just mobbed also in a way. You know, whatever I did was wrong. And I got very insecure, and it lasted maybe 2 weeks. And then I started to have the mantra, whatever work I was doing, wherever I was going, I was repeating the whole day, I only have to take care of my own mind. I only have to take care of my own mind. I only have to take care of my mind. Then there came you know what the other one is doing. And then I only have to take care of my own. And it worked. After a while, it worked. I was able to leave the place without any anger, without any resentment. Yeah. So the one that mobbed me, she was upset because when she saw that her mobbing was not having any effect anymore, she accused me of being aggressive and arrogant, kind of, because it didn't affect me anymore. And I was actually also, it's true, I was making fun of her a little bit, of her festival. So I didn't behave totally properly, but at least I said when I left, I said, look, I leave here without any resentment, without, not disappointed, it's okay, but I just see that it's not working and I'm going. And it's such a relief to be able to say that without the voice being up here, without closed here. But it was hard work. It was really hard work. Yeah, it was really, really hard work. And what helped me also, as you say, it helped me to talk to somebody about it, because I was sharing the room with somebody. So every day I came back to the room in the evening, kind of telling her my sorrow and what she did again and this and that and how she treated me. And the other person just listened to me, never said anything, just said, yes, yes, yes. Then after a while I said, why are you just saying yes? She said, because it's true. What you're saying is true. So this is another thing. I think that we have to be really, really careful not to make the action better than it is, but saying, oh yeah, it's my karma, so it doesn't matter and all this. No, the action of being treated in that way, or somebody else being treated in that way, that is a negative action and it should not be. So that, you see, the ego is confirmed that, hey, yes, this is bad. And me telling this other person, it was very, very helpful, because then I lost interest because we had nothing to kind of to exploit the story, because all I'd said was facts and it's true, but then I could let go because somebody had listened. Yeah. So if you tell the same thing to the same person all the time, that this is why therapy works, because it's always the same person. Yeah, because if it's always another person that you are telling them your sorrows, it becomes interesting. It's interesting for the other, but they ask questions and this, and have opinions. Whereas if it's always the same person, they just say yes, like a therapist. They just listen. And by the way, compassionate listening, or if somebody listened to you, to your sorrow, is very, very healing. So if you have nobody to listen to, you have to talk to yourself with a lot of compassion, by going inside, by feeling how it feels, and to really say, yes, this is very, very difficult. What do I need right now? And then you look what you need. You allow the mind to find itself what you need. It's very healing. It's called self-compassion. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, you're right. And it's lacking in the Tibetan tradition quite a bit. Why? Because they don't have such big but weak egos like we have. They are not such individuals. They're more part of a group. They have absolutely no problem being part of a group. Here because we have this big thing, I am special. And there, if nobody notices it, yeah. And we are spoiled, we have this idea that we should have enough money, enough respect, work we want to do, we should be happy. We have this idea. We are not born with a philosophy or views where it says, hey, your life is suffering. Hey, your life is not satisfying. We're not born with this. We are born with what Ilil is saying. Holiday is happiness, ice cream is happiness, money is happiness, good reputation is happiness, many friends is happiness, nice car is happiness, good house is happiness. We have this view, and this view is wrong. Yeah. If you are born in a Buddhist society, you are born with the view of a positive mind is happiness, free from negative emotions is happiness, and your nature is pure. Yeah. So even if somebody treats you in a very bad way and don't see your qualities and all this, your nature cannot be touched by that. But we think ego is nature. This is me. Yeah.
It's like what His Holiness says, when someone asked him about what about self-hatred, and he was like, what does that mean? He couldn't understand what we were talking about at the beginning. And Lama Yeshe says that also, that this is very sad how we are treating ourselves and how we talk to ourselves in our mind.
Exactly. So we have to be really kind to ourselves. So we do just a few minutes of being, again, kind to ourselves. Yeah. Especially when you do these very difficult texts, is important that you are kind to yourself, you know? Because when we are hard with ourselves, we do it as a punishment. We're not doing it out of compassion. We're not doing it to protect ourselves. We're doing it because you got angry, you are bad, so therefore now you have to give up the victory because that will make you suffer more. Something distorted like this. You know, we have very distorted views of who we are and how we should treat ourselves. Because when we talk about self-compassion, it's not self-pity. Yeah? There's a big difference. Self-pity is kind of, oh, poor me, you know, I'm the only one having to undergo this suffering, and oh, wow, this, you know. Self-compassion says, okay, yes, this is bad, this is hard, this is bloody difficult. And then it would say, like compassion, but I'm not the only one. It would see the shared humanity, yeah. And having also, the first step of self-compassion is awareness. You have learned to be with the object, which is your mind state, without reacting. To look at it in a neutral way, like a doctor who would look at the wound. He's not going like, oh, wow, this is horrible. Self-pity is like, oh, this is horrible. Compassion is, let me look what this is. Yeah, in a very calm way. So this is why awareness, like a basic awareness that you do with shamatha or whatever meditation, that's what you need for self-compassion. Otherwise it goes into self-pity. And then this view of shared humanity. Yeah, I'm not the only one. I mean, come on. I'm not treated in the right way, but could be much worse. Yeah. And then, you know, emptiness and all this. And then what do I need to love yourself? Okay. Not, oh, you poor thing. This is not really good, but come on, you know, self-compassion can also be, come on, you can get over this. Stop being so childish, like a mother, yeah? Self-compassion has two aspects, like they call about the yin aspect, which is just the kindness, just looking with an open heart, with kindness, but also the yang aspect, who kind of kicks you into action. Because self-pity, you can't act anymore. You're just sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. So it's, if you don't have self-awareness, you cannot see the difference. That's why, again, you know, I can encourage you, go to meditation groups where you just sit and watch your breath or another object, you know. If you want the mind to transform the mind, your intelligence is going to help you, yes, because you will understand the methods. But if you don't have awareness, if you don't have like if you're not able to cultivate a calm mind who can look at it like a doctor who looks at the horrible wound, then nothing will transform, because your agitated mind will again distort the whole thing. Yeah. But yes, Maya is right, you know. So again, we do some positive wishes for ourselves to finish this. We only did one verse. I always planned to do at least 3, but we did 1. But never mind. So for the week, for the house homework, you know, when Shantideva says causes for suffering are many, causes for happiness are few. So try to see this when you suffer now during the next week. Try to see it as normal, and I'm not the only one. Okay? Yeah, I am not the only one, because otherwise it goes into self-pity and your suffering becomes very, very big. And we see the shared humanity, and you think, okay, I'm living in Israel, it's not great, but I could be living in the States as a Black person. It would be much worse. Yeah, for example, like this. So you find something where it's much worse, and to really create compassion and to see, shit, this is samsara. I want to get out of here. Yeah, at the moment, I tell you, samsara is in full glow everywhere. Yeah, with the virus, with the financial problems, now with the violence in the States and also in other countries where it starts. Okay? Okay, so we just sit for a few moments. And then I always use the same sentences. And if you keep using them, if your mind gets used to the same sentences, then slowly, slowly it will really start to work. May I be safe. Just that. You don't need to have a certain feeling, just a sentence. The wish for you to be safe, the same way you would wish that for an innocent child. May I be safe. May I be protected from physical and mental harm. May I be strong, healthy, free from fear, loving and peaceful. And peaceful doesn't mean that you don't see injustice. Peaceful means you're not getting angry at the aggressor, but you have compassion for aggressor and victim. Because 100% absolute victim and 100% absolute aggressor, that does not exist. It's only our angry mind who is making that. And the anger seems to be justified. May I be strong, healthy, loving, and peaceful. May I be able to live my life with joy and ease. Not being concentrated then when I have joy and ease only on my happiness, but then being able to be concerned about the happiness of others. So it's not a childish joy and ease who just, looks after your own welfare. But if your mind is joyful, if your mind is at ease, then you can interfere. May I be able to live my life with joy and ease, not being plagued and controlled by negative emotions anymore. Because why? That's my potential and that's my nature, which I can never lose. May I be able to discover that nature so I can live that potential. Okay. So homework, yeah. If something dissatisfying comes, you just go, yeah, what do you want, mind? It's normal because you have created negative karma in the past. So stop complaining. Yeah. The situation is difficult. The situation is bad. But if you are getting angry now, there's resistance and then it turns to suffering. So use these arguments with your mind, I'm very fortunate at the moment because most of the time I'm alone. So nobody is kind of pushing my buttons. So it's nice, actually. I have to say, it's really nice. So then we can use that time and to practice. And then when we go out in the world again, then it might work better and, not getting angry. Yeah. So, but again, it doesn't mean that you're not seeing the trouble in the world, it's okay, but not getting angry at the people because it doesn't help. Having compassion for those who are creating the situation, and that, of course, that is very difficult. And then to think about, as Yora said, you know, we're not using the word renunciation, definite emergence. I want to get out of here. I don't want to be reborn, nor in America, nor this, nor here, nor there, not even in Switzerland. Because in Switzerland, people get upset if they can't go to the movies. I mean, amazing, isn't it? Okay, so I wish you a very good week. Thank you for listening to me. The session was beautiful and helpful as always. Thank you very much. You're very welcome, Hagar. Which one? Hagar, you don't have a camera. I do not see you. I only see your name.
I don't have a camera, but I'm always here.
Okay, good. Nice.
Thank you. I loved it.
Yeah.
Really helped me. Really, really helped.
Okay, thank you. It's nice if it's helpful. If it's not helpful, it's also fine, because you can think it's a waste of time, but you didn't create any negative karma during that time. You didn't spend any money. You didn't, you know, you didn't hurt anybody's feelings. So it's great. So we rejoice. It's also, you know, it's another thing we don't know how to do is rejoicing about the good things that we do. Coming home in the evening and thinking, oh, I haven't hurt anybody today. How wonderful. I haven't insulted anybody today. How wonderful. We rejoice in our ethical conduct. Not feeling like useless. Not hurting anybody is very useful in this world. So if you're too weak to kind of hurt others, be happy that you don't have the courage to hurt others. So be happy, it's great. Because you're not creating negative karma and you're not disturbing anybody's peace of mind. But I'll let you go, because otherwise I go on.
Anila,
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that, like, it seems like I'm criticizing Toshita, but I didn't mean that. It's just individual people that you have come across, because I love Toshita very much. It's an amazing center, and I'm very grateful for everything I got from this for the past 6 years.
So do I, but it's also good to see the negative sides of it. That's fine, you know. And just maybe it's also just to warn people, you know, when they go and volunteer somewhere there, that they have this expectation that everybody is already a Buddha, so that they know that there can be also problems in Tushita. But it's good that you clarify it. That's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Yes. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, Anila.
Thank you so
Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. Have a good week. Bye.
You too.